And this is End Time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to In Time. Thank you all for joining us. Before we begin, just a couple of quick notes. We are simulcasting on both our channels. For those of you who don't know, In Time is two channels. It's In Time and it's Overtime. The reason we do this is because oh God, life was a lot easier when it was one channel. I miss it being one channel. Our head mod misses it being one channel, but I really truly believe it was best for our audience to have it be two. And the reason is simple. It's all educational content and it's all along sort of a similar vein, but the In Time channel is now basically doing just our breaking news, our current events, what's happening right now, literally what's happening in time. And we had a lot of fans who loved that content, and they said, why are you guys doing this other educational stuff? And then we have these other shows on the psychology of memory, stochastic terrorism. What is stochastic terrorism? Much more sort of evergreen content that, hopefully 30 years from now is still relevant, but isn't really what's happening right here, right now. And the fans of that content said, why are you guys doing breaking news? I mean, yeah, some crazy woman is running around Trump Tower with a automatic rifle, but in the US we call that Tuesday. So we decided if you're interested in both content, you can like and subscribe to both. And you get all of the In Time content, or if you're more interested in just our current events, that's In Time. And if you're interested in our discussions with philosophers, psychologists, historians, and so on and so forth, the history of Iran and Iraq, the history of Persians and Arabs, or whatever that content is, that is going to be on Overtime. So two channels. Right now, there is some content that we stream on both. This is one of those shows, so you're going to see the restream bot that is echoing what's happening on the other channel for each of you, so you can each see the live chats. This is a nightmare. Nobody likes this. I don't like it, but we have to do this until we get to 1,000 subs on Overtime. So we're hoping you guys could do us a solid. There's a link to the Overtime version of the show, and if you can go there, we are 100 subs short of 1,000. Once we get to 1,000, it makes everybody's life a lot easier. It also makes our head mod's life a lot easier. So yeah, there are some downsides, but that notwithstanding, that was funny. Okay, fuck everybody who didn't laugh at that joke. The problem is people like my head mod better than they like me. So if you can do us a solid, and once that gets to 1,000, it makes all of our lives a lot easier. It unlocks a whole bunch of options that right now we can only do on In Time and can't do on both channels. This is absolutely going to be best for our audience. Makes it so you guys have a lot more control over what kind of In Time content you have available to you. But until we get 1,000 subs on that channel, it's just a lot of growing pains. So all that said and done, and I know that none of you are here for that. Let us bring out, and one other thing. All of our super chats today are going to the Vatra Volunteer Organization, as always, when we have Operator Starsky on, because Overtime is not monetized. You cannot send super chats on Overtime. You will find a link pinned at the top to In Time. We are simulcasting on both the channels. You can go there, super chats, they will all go to the Vatra volunteer organizations. So having said all that, welcome both Operator Starsky and Commander Lance McMillan. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right, so it's been, I unfortunately was, I was not well last time, so we missed a week. So Starsky, if you could please get us caught up. What's been going on in the last week or two in Ukraine?
It was kind of crazy. We survived a bunch of missile strikes and drone strikes. And we've seen some boxing in Ankara. The Ukrainian member of parliament traditionally kicked some Russian ass for disrespecting the Ukrainian flag. And what can I say? Ukraine is a land of boxers, my friends. I mean, it's obvious, right? We just had another missile strike approximately 4 hours ago. As far as I know, eastern oblasts as well as Kyiv Oblast were targeted. Luckily, it didn't last long, about 1 hour. I think that majority of the missiles were intercepted. And we also noticed that the Russian attack is, let's say, Russian attacking potential is decreasing again. I'm not saying that they shelling, because it continues. They still use their guided bombs, but from what we saw, again, this is not a popular thing among Russian pilots, because we can see approximately 5 less than 10 bombs every day that are used on our positions. Probably it can tell something about their sanctions, their deficit of parts. We know that they have quite a few of those bombs, but I'm not sure that they can produce more. And the most recent missile strike that happened in Ukraine, we noticed that those missiles were only produced several months ago, which means that Russians cannot replace the missiles that they used, and they cannot produce enough missiles to reach their goals. One other thing, we saw also Prigozhin being very upset because he is losing his troops, and basically they don't receive shells, which is, I believe that it's a good, I would say, proof that they have conflict with their Minister of Defense. Also, it's another proof that they cannot provide enough shells for all the units that out there at the front line. And there was another thing. Recently, Prigozhin posted that video where he was nagging about like lack of shells and dead bodies and yada, losing personnel. And he said that they will leave Bakhmut on after the May 9th. Why this date was picked? It's because we should understand the way Russia is being managed nowadays. So everything in Russia is being managed by Putin himself, starting from their economics and ending with tactical operations on the tactical level on the front lines, which is absolutely crazy. And why Prigozhin basically announced the withdrawal from Bakhmut is because he promised to capture Bakhmut by 9th of May, and obviously he will fail. So that's the reason why he said so.
Okay, I was curious about why that date. It seemed awfully arbitrary, so that explains a lot. Anything else?
Basically, not much.
We've heard that Russia has begun jamming the various GPS-based ordnance coming out of Ukraine, and that this has had some efficacy against HIMARS systems. Is there anything that you know about that or can tell us about that?
Yeah, we know that they armed their units with those jamming devices. They're portable, and they can... there are different types of devices. Some devices are used to jam drones, and they jam the Wi-Fi signal, basically. And also they're using a lot of their electronic warfare machines to jam GPS. One of such machines, it's called 𝐒𝐚𝐬. I remember this stuff since, I think, 2016, 2017, because we had information that it was operating at the front lines back then when Putin claimed that there is no Russian troops in Donbass. And this electronic warfare machine can jam GPS signal. So it's able to do this. That's why it's one of the most tasty targets for our aircraft and our artillery.
There was also just a couple of days ago, two drones struck a dome on the Kremlin. Can you tell us anything about that, and what's the thinking in Ukraine about that?
Well, at first we were kind of celebrating, because I think it's a good reason to celebrate when something blows up in Moscow. But then we analyzed this video. There were those two men crawling on the rooftop, and there were two theories. One theory is that they had jamming devices, like the one that I mentioned, and another version is that they had fire extinguishers, because they knew that the drone will explode over this specific roof. That's why they were armed with fire extinguishers to put out the flame.
Interesting. So I'd like to bring Commander McMillan in on this. So we spoke about this somewhat last night. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, no, they were maintenance workers who were cleaning the dome at 2:00 in the morning so that they wouldn't be out there to distract tourists who were viewing the Kremlin artwork and everything at the morning. So that's really what was going on.
Thank you, comrade, for explaining that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this whole thing, this attack, just reeks of false flag operation. It just, it has to have been deliberately engineered by, the FSB or somebody like that. It makes no sense otherwise. And
Absolutely, I agree on that.
Yeah, and I think the other giveaway on that is the fact that, you'd think that if it was a real attack, as soon as it occurred, because the blogosphere erupted, you'd think that Russian news media would have come out and immediately started trumpeting, "Oh my God, the evil Ukrainians are attacking works of art, and this is a war crime." And no, instead we wait for 12 hours, and then we come out with the outlandish idea that no, it was an American attempt to assassinate Putin.
Yeah, that's a cute theory, and what I found interesting about that was there's been a lot of bellicose rhetoric out of Russia, but that's the first time I've heard them really directly that I can think of trying to levy such accusations against the U.S. and bring them into this. Now, what do you think that gets them, and is that something that people should be worried about?
It's Commander.
No, you go ahead.
So there are two things. First is whenever something happens in Russia for real, like exploding, like explosion at the oil station or the ammunition storage or something like that. Usually Russians call it this thing cotton, хлопок, and they say that nothing happened really, and it was just, aliens, nuclear
Smoking
diarrhea.
accident. Smoking accident.
It was
Smoking accident and things like that. So if Ukrainian drone hit the Kremlin, I believe that they would never say, like, they would never made any news about it. Like, they would never mention it. Never. Because they don't want people to realize that Ukraine poses a real threat. But it changed, and basically why they're calling this drone like American drone is because when Russian soldier dies, he never dies from a Ukrainian bullet. He always dies from bullet shot by American mercenary, NATO troops, Polish mercenaries, and things like that. Like, Ukrainian soldiers cannot kill Russians. Only NATO troops can kill Russians.
A tree fell on him.
Yeah. This is what they tell their audience. Like, Russian soldiers never die from Ukrainian fire. They always die from those Poles, Americans, I don't know.
Yeah, well, they can't admit that because A, it makes you guys look strong, and B, more importantly, it makes them look weak. And everything in Russia is about this impression of we are the strong bear, nobody can tangle with us, kind of thing.
Yeah,
so they have to concoct a lie.
Yeah, and that's the reason why this drone was American.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, it's so what is it when a helicopter gets shot down, or sorry, when a helicopter gets down, it's always like, a bird strike or something, like from 50 caliber birds, or whatever. All right, so if I could, let's talk about Putin for a second, because we've talked a lot about how the Putin regime could end, and I think most people have come to a consensus that the only way that's going to end is if he dies. The way that I think most of us have been looking at this happening would be some kind of overthrow of his government internally, either from the ground up, from the people, or far more likely internally from someone in his inner circle deciding, hey, it's time we had a change of the guard here, and then Putin would get taken out. But obviously, and I hear all the time people saying, well, why doesn't someone, just assassinate him or do anything like that? And so I wanted to talk about, briefly, Commander, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to bring up Yamamoto. Who was Yamamoto? How did he die? And why is that possibly relevant here when we're talking about Putin?
Sure. So Yamamoto was the senior-most admiral in the Japanese Navy during World War II. He's the guy who came up with the plan for the attack on Pearl Harbor. And in 1943, I think it was mid-April, we launched based on intercepted intelligence from Japanese military communications, we knew that Yamamoto was going to be flying along a certain path to go visit troops at the front. So we sent out a strike of long-range fighters to intercept his transport aircraft as he was flying from his headquarters to the front lines for this visit. And we shot him down and killed him. So that's what in modern military parlance is called a decapitation strike, where you remove, a senior official so that he's no longer a threat. We did something similar, for example, during the start of the invasion of Iraq, with the shock and awe attack on the 19th of March in '91, and we fired a whole bunch of Tomahawk missiles at one of his palaces because we had received, turned out it was faulty, but we received intelligence that he had actually gone to spend the night at this particular palace. And the goal was to try to kill Saddam, and with him removed right at the start of the attack, the entire Ba'ath regime would collapse, go into chaos, and we'd be able to overrun the country effectively, effortlessly. That's the idea behind these kind of decapitation strikes. So the question is, would the United States, or possibly another friend or ally, perhaps one with a flag that has blue and yellow as the colors in it, might they launch something similar in terms of a decapitation strike to take out Putin, which might open the door for a quick end of the war? Engineering such attacks are extremely difficult, and it depends on incredibly precise targeting information and intelligence. You have to know exactly where the guy is going to be at what time, and it's not just, is he going to be in that building? It's a question of, is he going to be in that room of that building when you try to hit it? So it's very difficult, and we know that Putin varies his schedule unpredictably. We know he uses decoys, lookalikes who go and do his PR things at times. So you think he's there, but he's not. So it practically, yes, it could be done, but the likelihood is, I think, very low, because you need that kind of precision to make that kind of an attack work.
But is Putin a valid target? I mean, there was that question with Yamamoto: was he assassinated? Could you consider him a combatant at the time? So Putin is the president.
Yamamoto definitely is a valid target. He's a military officer commanding forces in the field, so okay, that made sense. When you take the situation and ask, was Saddam Hussein a valid military target? That's open to legal interpretation. Now, we have, banks of lawyers that are necessarily an integral part of our targeting cells. So every time we say, okay, we want to launch a strike on this, the lawyers have to look at it and say, this is a legitimate target. This is not a legitimate target. This is a target that may be legitimate, but its proximity to other things may make it not a valid target for you to engage at this time. That was one of the things that happened frequently during Operation Iraqi Freedom, is that they'd say, okay, we know that there's a storehouse of, weapons and munitions in this particular building. We want to destroy it so we can deny the Iraqi army use of this stuff. And the targeteers would look at it and say, well, it's near a school, or it's near a hospital, or near a mosque. And then they'd have to do some very precise calculations to determine, well, can we make the attack still take out the building without causing damage to the protected building or other facility nearby? And I know of a number of cases where attacks were canceled after the decision was made that that was a target we wanted to take, and people would say, nope, you can't do it. It's not a legal target because of the overlaps. I also know that there are probably cases where pressure is applied to the lawyer, and well, you know, we're only going to break a few windows. Sure, yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead and shoot the tomahawk at that building. So it's questionable, but at least we make an effort to try to govern that. Now, whether Saddam / Putin in this case would be considered a legitimate military target, I think there's a very solid argument to say yes, he is.
Based on
the fact that he's probably the principal reason the war has continued as long as it has. A leader who would be in a more receptive state to negotiating an end to the hostilities, I think you could argue in that case, no, he's not a legitimate target. He's negotiating. He may be obstreperous, argumentative, but at least he's making an attempt to try to solve the problem and get peace. Admittedly, on favorable terms for his nation or for himself. But in Putin's case right now, we know that that's not the case. The only reason the war is continuing is because of him personally.
We have a couple super chats again. All of these are going to the Vatra volunteer organization, which helps a number of units in Ukraine, including Starsky's unit. So we have $5 from Killer Rabbit of 𝐒𝐚𝐬𝐵. I hope. Okay, that's 𝐒𝐚𝐬𝐵. Well, I can't.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail reference.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I should have.
Which compels me.
Here we go. Oh. Well, there we go.
I have an official Monty Python can of Spam.
Should we get the rabbit?
I have a holy hand grenade, but my head mod Titan tells me I'm not allowed to use it on the live chat when they get out of control. So I'm and besides that, I always have a problem stopping at 3. So Starsky, was the hypersonic missile this morning shot down by a Patriot or something else? Starsky, what can you tell us about that?
Our our spokesman for the anti-air defense talked about it today, and he said that currently they don't have information about ballistic missiles and specifically hypersonic missiles that were shot down by our anti-air defense. And he said that the pictures that were shown allegedly proving that it was a hypersonic missile, so they were possibly taken from other sources, maybe from previous strikes. And he didn't confirm this.
All right. We also have another $5 super chat from Killer Rabbit. There is a rumor that a bomb-dropping MiG was also shot down this morning. Do I get to drink a beer today? Was it shot down?
I don't think so.
So you may not have the beer. And $5 more, Killer Rabbit. Thank you so much for your generosity. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your super chats, and again, they'll all be going to the Vatra volunteer organization. Starsky, is Major Klitschko awarding Mr. Mari? They are deliberately taxing my dyslexia here. Mari Kovisky a boxing medal. Oh, that's. Could you tell? We glossed over that, but what happened? This was over the Ukrainian flag. Can you tell us what happened?
Great video of it.
So when this economic summit started and Russians began their speech, Ukrainians, the Ukrainian delegation brought Ukrainian flags, and they were protesting Russians. And Russians got kind of pissed off. And after this event, basically during the break, Ukrainians were making pictures with our flag, and one of the Russians decided to commit suicide, basically, and try to steal the flag. And like you don't do that. You don't do that because it's dangerous. It's bad for health, you know. So he was destroyed. I saw a bunch of gifs from this legendary fight. Some were pretty nasty. So that's the story basically. Russia always get Russians always get their asses kicked by Ukrainians in boxing, anywhere else, and it's like a good tradition that will never change.
Excuse me.
Yeah, there is footage of it. I think we should probably get the footage. I know it's on our Discord. Let me see if I can get it, and we'll see if we can air it before we wrap up today. So
it's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, and it's awfully petulant.
Behaving like schoolyard bullies.
Yeah, it's really and yeah, I've got it now, so I'll have it. I'll put it in just a sec. But it's awfully petulant. So let's see, $25, 𝐒𝐸𝐿 thank you for today's speakers. Our pleasure, and thank you to both of them for coming. We really appreciate their input, and also a CHF. I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to at some point just memorize all of the possible currencies. But from Yvonne Way, super sticker. So
CHF, Swiss franc.
The Swiss franc. I should have known you'd know that. I should have just asked. So with all that, what is going on with the Wagner Group, gentlemen? I know, and I want to start with Starsky. You've said before that fighting the Russians has been one thing. Fighting the Wagner Group is unfortunately something else. We know that Prigozhin had been really sticking in the craw of Putin over his own political ambitions, and that it seemed very much like he was deliberately getting less ammunition to try to really kill off Wagnerites and make the organization less strong and less of a threat to Putin. And it seems like he's had about enough of that. And at one point in his expletive-laden video, seemed to be threatening Putin, and certainly isn't going to fight in Bakhmut anymore. What does this, do you think, foretell for the future of that organization in this war?
One thing he wants to show is that he actually cares about his troops, and I think that if he moves out, then probably, I don't know, open window awaits for Mr. Prigozhin in the nearest future. Because the reason why he doesn't receive shells is because Putin doesn't want him to receive shells. Basically, he had everything back then when he was favored by Putin, when he had benefits, and Putin would provide him anything. He would provide him instructors from regular military, like Russian military, and he would provide them all kinds of stuff. Currently, we see a different picture. Probably Putin feels a bit disappointed, and the reason why Wagner doesn't, why this organization doesn't receive shells is because Putin doesn't want them to receive those shells and additional ammo and stuff. Maybe he wants to get rid of them like this. Maybe instead of an open window, this is his alternative way of dealing with Wagner.
Do you think that Wagner has a future in? I mean, it's been the most effective force for the Russian side. Do you think they have a future here, or do you think either because he's going to refuse to fight or because Putin's going to have them wiped out? Do you think they have a future on the Russian side?
I don't think so. Again, why Wagner was successful, why it was effective, is because they had thousands and thousands of convicts that were used in those so-called meat attacks, and that's the most efficient Russian way of fighting. Basically, it's not efficient at all generally, but for Russians it works sometimes. So currently they don't have personnel that could be thrown into the meat grinder, and the ones that left, basically there's approximately a company or two of highly trained personnel, but again they are nothing like Russian Spetsnaz, anything like that, because they had the same conventional training as other Russian contract soldiers that were trained by the same instructors, same trainers that train Russian contract soldiers. So there's nothing really special about them. The only problem that they're facing now is that probably Putin wants them to die in Bakhmut, including Prigozhin.
Yeah. Commander, your thoughts?
I agree with everything Starsky said here, but I think there's a lot more subtlety going on below the surface. He's dead accurate when he says the only reason Prigozhin isn't getting the ammunition, the personnel, the equipment that he wants is because they've been told not to give it to him. And the only person that can make that directive is Putin. Putin has essentially taken over command of the whole operation at this point. It's very reminiscent of what occurred in September of 1915 in the First World War, when the Tsar took over command of everything going on at the front. And that was one of the indicators that everything was falling apart. When the boss has to take control, it means he doesn't have faith in his own people. And the moment that happens, they begin to lose faith in him. So I think a lot of why they're defanging Prigozhin and the Wagner Group right now is because Putin sees him as a potential ally, not for himself, but for some oligarchic group that wants to move against him. He doesn't have proof. He hasn't moved against him deliberately. He hasn't chucked him out a window or whatever. But he wants to limit his ability to support a potential coup against him. That's probably what's going on here. And we have to remember Prigozhin actually does do a considerable service for the state in terms of the use of his forces overseas, and most notably in Syria. But there's a number of places that there are Wagnerite contingents in sub-Saharan Africa. And so eliminating Prigozhin and Wagner takes away a tool in the toolbox. So I don't think they want to just throw it in the lake and forget about it. So if you make it so he can't perform in Ukraine but is still existent, you can kind of send him overseas and get him out of the picture, where he's still a tool that you're using, but he's no longer a tool that somebody else could grab out of the toolbox to threaten you, if that makes sense from that weird analogy.
Actually, I agree, because African diamonds, we know that Wagner is involved into this business. So I think it's legit. They like Putin doesn't want him to die, but he doesn't need Wagner either. He is more allied with Shoigu and with regular military. The reason is because Prigozhin is not a military. Prigozhin is a freaking thug and ex-convict, and
A criminal with tanks.
yeah. So you cannot imagine a military making a statement on and specifically like with the rank of general, colonel, major, making a statement in social media with his troops and stuff. It doesn't work this way. Military people don't do that. Prigozhin does that because Prigozhin is less controllable. He's not a military. He doesn't know how this machine works. That's why Putin is more allied with regular military personnel, like Shoigu, because that one is he will execute like any command.
Yeah, there's oaths of loyalty involved, and he's more trustworthy. I mean, as much press as Wagner and Prigozhin get, we fail to realize his force really only amounts to about a brigade. So, he's maybe a brigadier general, more likely the equivalent of a colonel at the front. So, from a military perspective, he's almost a nobody. But he's very full of his own self-importance, and his political allies keep pushing him up that ladder to make him seem more powerful than he really is, because it serves their purposes as well.
Yeah, he's not a commander. He's rather like a manager.
Yeah,
he does all kinds of management for Wagner. He has other commanders, his subordinates. So basically, that's the story.
you're muted, Nick.
Thank you. Wouldn't be a show if I didn't mute myself at least once. Thank you. Excuse me. So I've been trying to spare everyone my coughing, so I've been muting myself here. So
My turn.
what I want to do is I want to bring up the map here. We were talking about there's been some pretty intense attacks, and I think it seems to me, and Starsky can correct me if I'm wrong or fill me in on this a little bit, but there have been some pretty intense attacks on the and let's see here. Let's bring this up on. You were talking about sort of on the eastern side, and you can see all of these attacks that I think are within the last 24 hours here. And it looks like it's an attempt to try to slow down or soften up Ukrainians before they do their counteroffensive for the spring. But what we've noticed here, and this is interesting, in the last 6 hours, all of these areas right here, these little dots here that are in the Russian territory,
They look like Chinese coins a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. That what those are is 18 individual settlements from the Zaporizhzhia region where occupation authorities have announced immediate evacuations, and they're getting people out of these areas, which suggests to me that they think that this is where the counter-offensive is going to come from, and they, for whatever reason, they did this last year where they're like, oh, we know where it's coming, and they got ready for it, and it came from somewhere else. But Commander, what does this look like to you? You had talked before about you had expected it either to come from here or maybe even a little further east, if I recall, in our last conversation about this kind of attack. Why would it come here?
There are basically 5 potential realistic axes of advance that we could anticipate the Ukrainian forces would move along. And arguably the 2 most lucrative, potentially, are the advance directly south out of Zaporizhzhia towards Melitopol, and then kind of going southeast towards Mariupol, one of those two. This is lucrative because A, it cuts the land bridge that the Russians are using to resupply the Crimea. It also puts Ukrainian HIMARS and such within striking range of taking out the Kerch Bridge, further isolating the Crimea. So I think what's going on here is the Russians anticipate that that may be where the attack is likely to come. So they're evacuating civilian populations, not because they want to keep the civilians safe. Let's be clear on that. They're evacuating them because they're a bargaining chip, as they see it. By taking them out of there and moving them into central Russia, beyond the Urals or whatever, that makes them no longer something that the Ukrainians can liberate. It makes them empty territories that now the Ukrainians are forced to negotiate to get those people back to their homes. So that is partially what I think is going on there. All the bombardments you're seeing up and down the line are the same kind of thing. I think they are attempts to spoil massing of forces preparatory for what they think may be the spring offensive.
Operator, yeah, please
go ahead. No, I was going to say that we know from some of the sketchy reporting we're getting, it looks like the Ukrainians themselves are engaged in a certain amount of what I would call enabling attacks, preparatory attacks. So they're conducting, reconnaissance in force. They're shelling various known ammo depots, assembly points, headquarters behind the lines and such. But they're not concentrating it all in one area, because that's the equivalent of putting the big neon sign up saying, hey, we're coming this way. They're very intelligently spacing that out all along the front lines so that the Russians really don't have an absolutely clear idea of where the offensive is likely to develop from. But it's stuff you need to do in preparation for said offensive.
I had another idea. It's just a theory,
Sure.
But currently the one thing that all Russian generals understand and realize is that they should start preparing for defensive operations. They should prepare for defense. At the same time, Putin's main goal is to take Bakhmut.
Yeah.
And obviously he's very, very mad at his generals that are unable to take this territory. And probably their Russian commanders are trying to pretend that they're doing something. That's why we see a lot of absolutely useless missile strikes that make absolutely no sense. We can see a lot of shellings and bombings that, again, make no sense whatsoever. And probably they're trying to show that they're doing their best in order not to make Putin angry. That's one of the versions.
Yeah, it's the standard case of be seen as doing something, so you're not the focus of the boss's wrath.
Yeah.
Operator Starsky, how many people have been deported from Ukraine, ostensibly either against their will or because it was either that or stay in the middle of a war zone getting hit by artillery? How many people have been deported from Ukraine, and where are they now?
The last number I saw was 1.5 million, but I should check it twice because I could be wrong.
That's a little higher than I've seen, but yeah, I've seen the number of 1.2, 1.25 mentioned.
Why is Russia deporting these people? I mean, doesn't Russia have to then feed them and take care of? I mean, why pull them out and send them into Russia? What's Russia doing with them?
Dmytro Lubinets is our responsible for protecting human rights in Ukraine. He said that as of December 2022, approximately 3 million Ukrainians were deported to the territory of Russia. Specifically 2,800,000 people.
And to what end?
According to this is according to our officials.
And to what end? What is Putin trying to accomplish by doing this?
First of all, it's a usual practice, that was known since Stalin's times, when he would remove some nationality or some several million people, and bring Russians in. Of Russians on the Russian territory are encouraged to come to Ukraine, to the occupied territories, and move in, basically. So that's one thing. And another thing is, again, they need hostages that they could trade. And several million hostages is like, it's an impressive number. Ukrainians will not have such numbers of POWs.
So deliberately committing more crimes so that they have more loot, essentially, to bargain with.
More leverage.
More leverage to to bargain.
We remember that 1943-44 Crimea. Crimean Tatars were removed. A lot of Ukrainians were removed as well from the previously occupied territories by Nazi Germans, and later, when those territories were liberated, a lot of ethnic Ukrainians were removed as well. And later, a lot of Russians were brought to Crimea. So currently, their grandchildren are saying that Crimea was always Russian, and they moved into the houses that belonged to Crimean Tatars and Ukrainians. Not only in Crimea, but also there were plenty Ukrainians deported from Donbass, from Mykolaiv Oblast, and different other regions.
The flip side of that isn't discussed often is that when these populations are relocated, they're broken up. And if there's a deliberate program of what I would call Russification, they try to extinguish their separate ethnicity identity. And again, the same kind of thing. After 2-3 generations, they forget that they were Tatars or Chechens or whatever. We're Russian. And so you disperse them all over, the central portion of Russia, the Urals region or whatever, or further east. And it just makes the problem go away. And remember, Russia is facing a huge demographic collapse issue. Their population is imploding, not just because people are leaving, but also because their birth rate is so damn low. So this helps alleviate that pressure by providing new citizens, so to speak. So it's a two-part program, and this has been going on since before Stalin. There are a number of towns in, for example, Moldova, that their names actually are derived from a Russian word that was used to represent a settlement that was exempt from taxation. So this was a way you encourage Russians to settle the region by saying, if you leave your home here and go there, you won't have to pay taxes, and your heirs won't have to pay taxes for 2 generations, because you've resettled in areas that we deem needed Russian population to settle in, to make them Russian territory. And I think that's a lot of what's going on here, is if you strip the Ukrainian population out of Ukraine and voluntarily forcibly resettle it with Russians, then they can do the same thing. You just claim, oh, no, it's always been Russian. Everybody here is Russian. There are no Ukrainians living here. It's a very dark propaganda campaign, if you will.
Yeah, and this is exactly how it works with the Ukrainians that are forcefully assimilated. They are brought into a society where Ukrainians are being highly despised by everybody else, everyone around, because Russian society is fascist by its nature, and Ukrainian kids that are brought into this environment, they don't want to be despised, so they will start speaking Russian language and assimilate, and eventually, several generations, and we have ethnic Russians.
Yeah. So they're getting a larger population of ethnic Russians over a generation or two. They're splitting them up so that they lose all contact with immediate family and with their roots and culture. And Russian settlers get to settle already pre-built towns and cities where the infrastructures are already in place, and probably better living conditions than they would have had in Russia, the war notwithstanding. Is that roughly accurate?
Yeah.
Well, no wonder it's a war crime. The amount of, I'm going to stay away from
We never did that for the Native Americans.
Yeah,
wink, wink, nudge.
Yeah, well, actually,
it's a vile thing that's been as long as human history, honestly.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I think that's a very good example for Americans to sit there and say, it worked in the U.S. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. We have from Suzanne Niflin $10 expressing several emojis with clear outrage over the situation, which I think is very much warranted. So let me cover a couple of quick things. First of all, I did, for whatever reason, I thought we had pinned the overtime channel to the top of In Time so that you can find it. But again, we're 100 subs short. So if you're watching right now, or if you're watching either live or seeing this later, I know it's a bit of an ask, but if you can go to Overtime, it is pinned in the top. It's also in the description. Like and subscribe there. In addition to In Time, if we hit the 100 subs, it makes everybody's lives a lot easier here, and we would really appreciate it. We need 1,000 subs, and we can stop most of this nonsense, which really it's the growing pains of splitting the channel. I think it's well worth it, but it's a pain in the neck up until we get 1,000. So I wanted to take care of that. Also, the Discord just dropped that. Titan, thank you very much. Come join us on the Discord. We're following what's going on in Ukraine, as well as Sudan and any number of other things going on, especially also U.S. politics, what's going on with Trump. All of this has significant implications, and the more that Republicans amass power in the U.S., the harder it becomes. It affects everything in the world, but certainly also Ukraine. So come on in and check that out. And as promised, here is the video. This is the kerfuffle over the Ukrainian flag. So let's watch this now. All right, so there you go. I think there may have been
Symbols are important.
Symbols are extraordinarily important. That was actually speaking of the difference between what we do on in time and overtime. We had a discussion on overtime, and I'd like to get into depth a bit more on that, sort of an anthropological discussion on how and why symbols are important, and the study of apes, from which, of course, we are descended, and that an alpha male can actually only effectively command a tribe of about 30 apes before if they don't have any direct eye contact with him or are constantly reminded of his presence, they end up sort of wandering off and he loses control of them. So about 30 is the most that you can find in a pod. Having said that, if the apes can have a symbol that represents that power, it dramatically and exponentially increases, depending on how you deploy those symbols, the ape's ability to project power. And it turns out we operate very similarly and in roughly the same numbers. So that's one reason why flags and other symbols of power are extraordinarily important when discussing Russia. So that is an example of conversations that we tend to have on overtime that can be certainly are important for current events, but also tend to be a bit more what's the word I'm looking for, like evergreen content that's not necessarily like breaking news that you'll find on In Time. So that's a good example of the difference in channel. But yes, symbols are extremely important, and I think we need to I think we need to have that discussion on overtime in the coming weeks. We have another $15 from Suzanne Niffen. Can't get enough of this clip. Slava Ukraine. Yeah, it's a great clip. So thank you very much for that donation, and we will be sending that off with the others to the Vatra Volunteer Organization. So thank you for that. We also have just did our our charity stream for Ukrainian refugees. We were streaming for the UN Refugee Relief Fund for Ukraine, and we have some updates on what's going on with that. That will be on the Discord, and we'll be putting all that information there for those of you who are interested. We also have information on. We just had on Brandon Mitchell, and that was a very powerful discussion, and he is a very complex and interesting man. We had him on Tuesday. I encourage you to see that. That's, I think, one of my favorite interviews so far, and it was, I think, a very personal interview. He spoke very highly of you. I tried to dissuade him, Operator Starsky. I was just like, I don't know what's so special about, but he certainly was a big fan of yours. It was a great interview. And we'll have all the information on that. That's going to the the hospital battalion or the medical battalion. So all that information will be on our Discord. So let's see, barring that, anything else, gentlemen, that we have missed or that we wanted to touch on before we go?
Not really.
Yeah, I don't think of anything huge right now. I have questions, but I don't want to put Starsky in an unpleasant position of having to answer said questions, because they're militarily related. But I keep wondering, A, when the attack is going to kick off, and B, how much of the promised military equipment and logistical support has actually arrived and is in place to support said offensive. And I think those two things are going to be a really interesting issue that we will be addressing in upcoming weeks.
I've noted, and this is every now and then I get somebody I'll get a DM from somebody in Discord, and they'll be like, you fail to ask Starsky questions that he'd obviously be able to to answer about like the upcoming offensive and so on. You always ask McMillan, like, yeah, that's because Lance can actually speculate about these things without revealing military secrets. It puts Starsky in a bit of an awkward position, so I try to avoid asking him those questions. I will ask you this, Operator Starsky, how a lot of countries, let's see, about 4 months ago, promised a great deal more supplies to Ukraine. Can you tell us how those supplies are coming? If those supplies have been getting through, has Ukraine been making use of them? And also, you had mentioned ammunition shortage, and I was wondering if there's anything you could tell us about that.
We know that there's a plan that was prepared by our partners. We know specifically that in Poland there will be a factory built that will provide service for HIMARS systems, and we also know that in several other countries there will be. Those countries will be providing Ukraine with additional ammo and shells and missiles. So that's the plan. I know that our partners are working on that really, really hard. As for other military supplies that are coming to Ukraine, they are coming, and they are being used. That's all I can say.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
I will note one thing in relation to what you were talking about just now. The logistician's maxim is whatever you think you're going to need, ask for 3 times that amount and you're still going to be short.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things that's going to be a takeaway in the lessons learned from this war is everybody in NATO is going to start looking at their munition stocks and saying, Jesus, we really need to have much larger stockpiles.
All right. So let me, and then just as a reminder for those of you who are, because you mentioned logistics too. So we have a number of really exciting shows coming up. Anna from Ukraine is going to be on this coming Tuesday. A week from that, Pat Lomeinster, somebody to talk about policing issues of some kind. I don't know. It's a filler show. One of these days I'm going to say that and he's going to be in the live chat, and my phone's going to start. If my phone starts to ring, it's because he's we'll leave that one alone. And then the next week after that, former commander, Lieutenant General, former commander of NATO ground forces and former commander of all U.S. forces in Europe, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges will be on, and we'll be talking to him about what's going on in Ukraine, NATO's response, how this does or does not put NATO in a box. Are there really red lines for NATO's engagement in this situation? And any number of other things. Lance, I hope you'll be joining us for that. It's a slightly different hour for you, but I think that's going to be a great show. So he was the supreme commander, I want to say, of NATO ground forces in Europe, really knows what he's doing. We're going to have him on, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. That will be on the 23rd of May. So a lot of really good shows. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and I guarantee if you hit the bell, YouTube will notify you almost a few minutes after the show is ended that we're going live. It's YouTube. They've always done that. If you can, my last plea for this, go to Overtime, like, subscribe. If we get 100 subs during this show, it makes all of our lives a lot easier, and we stop some of this simulcasting stuff, it's a necessity to get that channel to 1,000. And then once that's a mature channel, we can put our content there that belongs there, and that's going to be a lot of the more in-depth discussions that aren't necessarily present, but in our view is still very important for a nuanced understanding of what's going on in the world around you. We work very hard to get you the information and the guests that we do. We hope you like it, and the best way to show us that is like, subscribe, share, the content with friends. We really do appreciate it when you do that. Super chats and memberships also really do help. We get demonetized. We get demonetized all the time. The reason is I am not a fan of using code words and of varnishing the reality of things. And when we talk about Ukraine, when we talk about genocide, every time I use the word genocide, we get demonetized. They'd demonetize this show 3 times for me having used it already if they could. We think that we need to use the right terminology. That's what adults do. That's what you're going to get on In Time. So we hope you will support us. $10 from Annie 𝐒𝐤𝐚𝐬. Captain Starsky does all of the talk. Wow. All right. Captain Starsky does all of the talk and speculation of the timing and location of the counteroffensive on social media cause additional strife for Ukraine. Oh, you there? This was for you, Andrei. Yep.
Oh, it was a question.
Sorry, it was a question. And I think the essence of the question actually is, we're speculating as to what may happen in the upcoming offensive. Other people have speculated. How does Ukraine? How do the military, feel when people are speculating like this? We're speculating, and we're sitting here saying like, "Oh, we think this may happen for this reason." Does this cause any angst for the military in Ukraine when we speculate?
I don't think so, because here a lot of, let's say, we have a lot of messages coming from here and there, from different sources, different experts, again, speculating on this. I cannot say that it changes our opinion, our attitude towards this much. We all want to finish this war as soon as possible. That's why we believe, we trust in armed forces of Ukraine. So I don't think that it changes much.
Commander, my view on this would be that basically of all the people speculating, you're going to find some people who are reasonably close to accurate in their speculations. But I don't think you're going to come up with anything that the Russians haven't already speculated on. And I don't think you're going to be... So what do you think, as someone who's had to plan these kinds of battles, what do you think is the effect?
You assume that people are going to speculate. You know it's going to come out. There's no way to suppress it in an environment where there's a free press. People are allowed to do that. It's part of what goes on. I don't want to bore you with historical stories, but I mean, in the lead up to the D-Day landings in Normandy in World War II, there was all sorts of just utter panic when somebody would, and it wasn't even saying, "Oh, I think it may be the landing is going to go here." Somebody famously had a crossword puzzle like the week before the landings, where some of the code words just happened by sheer coincidence to be in the crossword puzzle. And I mean, people were just going, in the military command structure, we're going bug shit over the fact that, oh my God, they're leaking information to the Germans. No, it was just a sheer coincidence. And the other side is in that exact same situation because there's this deluge of information that comes out. And, how do they sort reality from fantasy, from speculation, from, so it's part of the game that's played of figuring it out.
I can totally see that. That was about, okay. You're doing the New York Times crossword puzzle, like 8-letter word for supreme ruler and or invasion of Normandy. Okay. So I'm sorry. I think I cut you off. You were saying.
No, I mean in the Normandy case, one of the words was overlord, which is most people who are semi-familiar with history know was the code name for the whole Normandy invasion. And the fact that it's an unusual word, you wouldn't expect to see it in a crossword, but it showed up. And again, everybody, oh my God, they're leaking the name of the operation. I'm sure there's a bunch of that going on right now. I'm sure there are a bunch of staff planners in the Ukrainian military general staff who, see us perhaps chatting about this and going, oh my God, he said they're going towards, Mariupol. Yeah, but I also said they might be going towards, Luhansk or making a direct drive on, because that's how I couch my things of why I think each one of these is better than the other or worse than another. But other people say, oh yeah, I know. No, you don't, unless you're, privy to top secret information from the Ukrainian general staff. You have no freaking idea what you're saying. You're just speculating.
Well, unless you're Peter 𝐒𝐲𝐿, but we've had that discussion. We also need to talk about the leaks. We'll do this either on our next downtime or something. We need to talk about the leaks coming out of Fox News on Tucker Carlson, because that stuff is fun. But we had a gifted membership. Suzanne Niffin gifted it. Suzanne, you've been tremendously generous, and we here really appreciate it. So I'd also like to take 1 minute to thank the mods. Especially our head mod Titan, who wrangles all of the mods, and I love giving shit to, primarily because he started it and has always given me shit on my own channel, and I try to mute the guy, but somehow when I take his wrench, he ends up with still having a wrench, and then I'm going to I don't even know what to do. Sorry, there's issues. There's issues, they're long-standing, they go for a while, but I'd like to thank everybody who donates that time, and people who donate time sorting through the news on our Discord. Our Discord's pretty expansive. I think if you go look at it, and you'll find Lance there willing to answer questions for people, and he's a great resource, and we have other resources. Operator Starsky, Captain Obvious, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Now, tomorrow, I think you, and if I remember correctly, is it going to be Ukraine Matters, is going to be on the shills? Am I correct on that?
Yeah, Georgie will be there. So everybody's invited.
All right. I'm hoping I can make it. And Lance, hoping you can make that one as well. So that will be tomorrow, 3 p.m. on the shills. With any luck, we'll be there as well. The shills have been really very generous and helped us out a lot, which I sincerely appreciate. Absolutely. Thank you all for that. Lance, thank you once again for coming on. Thank you to everybody who has gone over to Overtime and subbed there. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Suzanne and everyone else who gave us a super chat. We will see you on Tuesday for Anna from Ukraine, and then we will see you at a minimum, I think, 2 weeks from that for... I always want to say Brigadier General, Lieutenant General Benjamin Hodges, former former NATO commander of Allied Ground Forces. I think those are going to be some great shows. Thank you all for your support, and we will see you on Tuesday. Have a good night.
Take care.